that's okay. I usually take attendance about 15 minutes in, just to make sure that I have everybody that attended the live training. So, um, without further ado, I will turn it over to Curtis and Mark for our fantastic virtual hearing and witness tips.
Yeah, thank you, Tani. I'll
Yes.
start out. For everyone concerned, the rule that gives attorneys 1.2 hours of credit for this, that's a Missouri bar rule. That's not a Missouri PSC rule.
Right.
So I do apologize. And it's because the Missouri bar counts 50 minutes as an hour. So if that doesn't tell you that you should definitely be double checking your attorney's math, I don't know what will. All right. So I guess to start out with on I guess it's technically slide 2. I just wanted to do a quick note on what witness preparation is and what it isn't. There's a quote here from an old case. It's frequently cited in what a lawyer's obligation is in helping witnesses prepare to testify for trial.
And Mark, Curtis, do you want to go ahead and share your screen with them?
Oh, yeah. Let me try that.
Yes. It's that little share content with the arrow up at the top.
Okay, let me try to find.
And if you have any difficulties, let me know.
Is that
okay?
Is it showing up now?
Yeah, and go ahead and
Okay.
go to presenter. Okay, perfect. We can see everything. Can you guys see everything? And if you want to go to presenter view, I don't know how you want to do that.
Well, I have it open in PDF.
Oh, okay, perfect. That's fine.
So,
that's okay.
If that works, I'll just
yeah. If everybody can see that, then we're good to go. Okay.
So and the quote is, a lawyer's duty is to extract the facts from the witness, not to pour them in. To learn what the witness does know, not to teach him what he ought to know. And so the reason I say that is witness preparation, meetings like this, one-on-one witness preps. What attorneys are trying to do is trying to get a clearer idea of the facts known and the opinions held by our witnesses, and helping them emphasize those facts and opinions and making sure that they get in the record so that we can put on our best case. What we're not trying to do is suggest changes to the actual substance of your testimony, trying to tell you what your answers should be, or providing you with information. So if you're in a witness prep situation, we're asking a question, if we provide you with information, we'll need to get the actual documents documenting whatever information it is to you, so that you actually know that, because a lawyer telling you something is not a basis for good testimony. And so anytime a witness prep, we're not feeding you facts. We're just trying to see what you know and what you don't know. And so with that caveat in mind, what today is, it's really more nuts and bolts, not case specific, on how you can persuasively prepare for hearings. The sources this comes from, I looked at a National Institute of Trial Advocacy training recently on this one that had some jury consultants come in and say what they've been seeing in some virtual hearings, and what they're hearing from juries that are watching virtual witnesses testify, the things that are working and things that aren't. So it is new. It's not time tested long term tips and tricks, but hopefully it's more valuable than nothing. And so today we're just going to kind of look at what technology you should have, the logistics, things like who's in the room with you even is an important consideration. Normally you don't have to worry about that as a witness, who's in the room with you, because you appear at the hearing room, and the people in the room with you are the people in the hearing. We'll also look at how to handle exhibits. Some of that will be dictated by the judge. Some of it might be your own personal preference, whether you want to look at a screen or have it print out like you would in a real in-person hearing. And so the first topic is audio video. The technology. What do you need to appear? I'm glad that Tani mentioned earlier today, IS does have cameras and equipment now that you can check out. So if you are appearing as a witness, go ahead and, I'm guessing, Tani, they can just go on the intranet and fill out the form to check those out on whatever date they will need them.
Absolutely, yes, and just
Okay,
let them know how long you'll need it for, and you can, and then just turn it in when you're done.
perfect.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the four basic pieces are a computer, a camera, a speaker, and a microphone. Um, and On the computer, you're going to need to make sure that your system specifications will support it. So, for example, if you're appearing by WebEx, making sure that whatever computer you're logging in from has WebEx downloaded, that it actually works. You can work either with staff counsel's office or IT. Some staff counsel's office maybe would help out with the um, camera setup and whatnot, to help you appear persuasive. But IT would actually be the ones who actually would, I'm guessing, get it, make sure that WebEx actually opens and you can connect to a meeting. So in each, depending on how you appear, I think most of the time here it would be WebEx, but maybe it would be Teams at some point. Maybe it would be Blue Jeans or some other IT system at some point. I don't know. Each one has different features. There's way to share files. There's way to, there's chats and question and answer boxes. There's different buttons that you press to turn the video on and off, and different buttons that you press to turn audio on and off. A big one that I think everybody has seen this in some meeting or another, where they call in, but they're also connected on their computer, and they unmute their phone, but their connection through the computer is muted and nobody can hear them, or they unmute both and it creates an echo. Running through the nuts and bolts of that and practicing is going to be really important so that you don't have that. I think most people are patient when you ask a question and then you don't get a response, and then 10 seconds later they're like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know I was on mute. There's a lot of patience for that now. I don't know how much longer the patience will last as people get more and more comfortable with virtual meetings, but it is distracting when that happens. The next thing is, anytime you're dealing with anything really, I mean, not just virtual hearings, but having backups. So you might have a copy of the exhibits that you're going to be testifying about on your computer, but it might also be a really good idea to have them printed out, or to have them on somewhere like a secondary device, like a PSE laptop, or something where you can access it. So if your computer crashes, you can still access those documents and testify about it. Because in the office, if you were in a hearing room and I don't know, you spilled coffee on your exhibits, we could always print off another copy and and work it out. But if you're at home, that might not be the case. So again, always have a backup. And then to really be persuasive, you're going to want to be able to limit your distractions. And so for visual distractions, make sure that you are in I call it a quiet location, but that just means like, there's not a lot of stuff in your background that people are going to be like, oh, what is, he's got a bookcase there with some weird books on there. Like, what's going on? Why do you have a copy of, that book? What's he trying to say? And that kind of goes to, maintaining a professional appearance and demeanor. Like Mark has a background of law books, and I have a background of Cardinals posters. I think Mark's background is probably better. It's more professional. So I think if you were to choose between the two backgrounds, I think Mark would be a better example than me. And then there's also the noise distractions, though, and that happens a lot. It happens with me, and I think it happens with everybody. And there's some things you can control and some things you can't, but to the extent that you can control it, you should. The big ones are kids, pets, and construction. So if you know that there's going to be, if Missouri American is out, digging your street up and putting new water or sewer lines down, that's going to be a lot of drilling and jackhammering, and it's going to be loud. Maybe plan to, go to the quietest room in your house where that won't come through as much. If you have things you can't control, like if your neighbor ends up mowing the lawn at 10 a.m. when you're supposed to be testifying, maybe trying to figure out a way to move to a different room so that it doesn't come through again as much. And then on the actual sound, so I know everybody has heard it where they're getting an audio feed from their computer, and they're also getting an audio feed from their phone, and you get a feedback effect, and it screeches and it echoes, and it's grating, and it sets everybody off. I hate it. And so if you are connected to your computer and your phone, I think that most of the time I think the phone provides perfectly crisp audio. So I will mute my computer and listen through the phone, and then I don't get that feedback effect. And the same thing, like if I'm connected by phone and computer, I just have my phone is my microphone. I turn the microphone on my computer or my iPhone or iPad or whatever off, and I'm only connected to audio. And again, like I said, only one audio stream. So if you're using, your computer speakers and you're connected through your phone, turn your computer speakers off. I think, and then if you do have headphones, I found that those do have a higher audio quality than like an iPhone, like the or a Android phone, the stock microphones that come with those. I think headphones are really good. So if you have one, I think you could have much better audio quality with that. And the next topic I have is rules and ethics. There's an important role that court reporters play, and court reporters are the ones who are recording the proceeding. They're authorized by law to be the official record of a proceeding. And nobody else should be recording the proceedings. Courts have this, agencies have these rules that you wouldn't go into a hearing room at the commission and just start recording with a video camera without permission. And so we would ask the same thing for a virtual witness, that they just if you're appearing as a witness, just appear as a witness. Let the court reporter be the one that records the proceeding. It's not your job to press record on WebEx or Teams. And the second rule is, if anybody is in the room with you, especially an attorney, but an attorney is an example, let the judge know, and then let everybody else know. The judge might request that the attorney appear separately on a separate device, maybe even in a separate room. And especially if there are third parties who are not a party to the case, like roommates, spouses, or children. If we do go into in camera and confidential information is discussed, we can't disclose that confidential information to third parties, so they'll have to leave the room. And so that's why those are the two reasons it's important to disclose who's in the room with you. And another reason, as far as like being a persuasive witness goes, is if you are appearing by camera, it is very obvious when you're looking at the camera like this, and when you're like looking off to the side, and it looks like you're talking with somebody. If you do know that somebody's in the room with you, and you say that, and you're looking off camera, it could look like you're getting coached, and it might make you less persuasive. So if somebody is in the room with you, maybe have them sit over to your side, out of your line of sight, so it doesn't look like you're looking off camera and getting fed answers or being coached on your answers. And that will definitely help make you more persuasive. And then as far as like there are different ways to handle exhibits, and I think this is where I'm going to hand it off to Mark and let him give some tips and tricks here. So
yeah, and I can go ahead and try to share my screen, unless you want to handle the slides for me.
I can.
All right, so one thing that is a little tricky with the virtual hearings is the handling of exhibits. Practically, we do the same thing that we would be doing in a physical hearing room, where essentially, a document would be handed to the witness and the witness would authenticate it, and the attorney might ask you some questions about it and then ultimately ask for it to be admitted into the record. It's just, of course, on a virtual platform, we're missing that physical interaction. So we got to jump through other hoops. So the first thing that I would recommend is for the witnesses to check and see if the commission has ordered or issued any procedural orders on the handling of exhibits. Review that, make sure you understand it. If you don't, talk to your attorney, and your attorney can help explain it to you and bring you up to speed on what to expect in the hearing. Sometimes the commission issues these orders, other times these matters are kind of handled more unofficially between communication with the attorneys and the regulatory law judge. So I think speaking with your attorney regarding exhibits is always a good idea. You want to go to the next slide, Curtis?
Yeah.
All right, so outside of maybe some ordered procedural steps for exhibits, there's typically 3 different ways hearing officers or various courts or other proceedings handle exhibits. The first approach would be to have the exhibits pre-marked and circulated prior to the hearing. And oftentimes here at the commission, we do that. And those will either be circulated via email, or they may just be placed on EFIS. But regardless, when you are testifying, you want to make sure that any documents or exhibits that are related to your testimony, you have them open and ready to reference while you're testifying. We do this, and we recommend that for physical hearings, in-person hearings as well. Oftentimes, witnesses will bring with them to the witness stand their testimony or other reference material. So I would recommend you doing the same thing for a virtual hearing, but you're most likely going to have that on your computer. So I would have those testimonies or documents open on separate tabs or in separate windows to where you're able to reference them quickly when you're being asked questions. Now, if you have access to multiple monitors, which some of us do not, but if you're one of the lucky few, it's probably a good idea to have those documents open on a separate screen and then use your second screen for the hearing. So that way you will be able to view who's talking and see what's kind of going on in the hearing a little better.
And Mark, I'll just interject. If you need any equipment, please make sure that you contact IT, because they will get you what you need. So please make sure to, if you need that second screen or anything like that, please follow up with them.
Now, another option for these pre-circulated exhibits is to just physically print them out and have them with you. That it kind of brings a more real feel, more familiar feel to like a traditional hearing setting. And then in that case, if you do have one monitor, it won't be cluttering up your screen, and you can easily reference them just at your desk or wherever you're sitting. Ready for that next slide, Curtis?
Yep.
All right, a second approach is, Curtis was kind of talking about this earlier, the various virtual platforms have screen sharing options or file sharing options. And occasionally during a hearing, other attorneys may just share their screen or do a file share. And it's essentially the same thing. You will be able to see it and view it, but since you don't actually have possession of that document at that time, I would think the number one concern for the witness is to make sure what is being shared with you is what it purports to be. So if you actually have access to the document that's being presented to you, I would bring that document up on your screen and do a quick comparison just to make sure what you are being asked questions about is in fact the document the attorney is claiming it to be. And going and just to touch on that for just a second again, that that's another another good reason to familiarize yourself with the functions of the virtual platform. Make sure you understand how the file sharing or the screen sharing works, just so it can be, the hearing will operate a little smoother. All right, the third approach might be for the commission to rely on some other system, be it a third-party file sharing system or just even through email. My experience has been doing a few of these virtual hearings is that email is usually the system that's relied on the most, and it seems to work pretty well. Generally, for pre-marked exhibits or your testimony, those documents are already going to be available to you. They've either been provided to you by the attorneys already, where they're on EFIS, somewhere where you can easily find them. However, if maybe you're being cross-examined by an attorney from another party and they are wanting to ask you questions about a document that hasn't been shared, the most likely course will be, prior to the questions they're going to ask, that document will be shared with all counsel of record, and then your attorney will provide it to you. And again, if and when this happens, I would recommend the first thing you do is review the document and make sure it is what the attorney purports it to be. If you have the document on your computer already, do a quick comparison just to make sure that, maybe if it's one of your work papers or if it's your testimony, you want to make sure there's been no modification or they didn't mistakenly send you the wrong document. All right, now on to a few more practical aspects. Curtis talked about cameras a little bit. I would highly recommend, whenever a witness is testifying, turn on your camera. There's a couple reasons for this. One, it makes it a lot easier for the court reporter to transcribe the proceedings when they can actually put a face to a name and see the movement of your mouth. And it just kind of makes things a little bit easier for them. Also, it brings a more personal aspect to your testimony. It's, in my opinion, it's a lot easier to provide persuasive testimony when other people can actually see you and you're not just some disconnected voice coming through a telephone or a computer. Now, for the best setup, I'd recommend that camera to be, at or slightly above eye level. And Kurt was talking earlier about, your setup. Make sure you have a nice clean background and you're ready to go. Now, if you don't have a camera, I think it was mentioned earlier, our IT department now has several cameras that you can check out. You could even consider providing your testimony to a secondary location. Oftentimes in past hearings, staff have come into the office and provided their testimony. And I know you can also even check out laptops here at the PSC that do have cameras available. Now, I mentioned the physical space briefly. Testifying virtually is very similar to testifying in person. And what we want our witnesses to do is to give an air of confidence and persuasiveness. So doing that, you really want to make sure you are aware of how you are presenting yourself. And an easy way, a first check on that is to make sure you're in a nice stable chair. You're not rocking around, swiveling. You don't want to look dejected or bored. And you always want to present that calm, confident demeanor. Cross-examination in these hearings can go for a long time, and it can be stressful. So, you might want to bring water up with you to the stand in a regular hearing. You can keep water here with you when you're presenting virtually. Keep it off camera. And I think it's a good idea not to put ice cubes in that water, because these microphones on the computer sometimes can be a little sensitive and they will pick up the clacking around of the ice. So you just want to limit any distractions you can. Now, as far as a background goes, If we're testifying from home, not everybody has a home office with a bookshelf full of legal books. So you just kind of want to find somewhere, if you're going to use a natural background, that is clean and it's professional and it's not too cluttered or distracting. Otherwise, all of these virtual platforms have the option to actually present an artificial background. You can get a little crazy. You can do like an island background. I wouldn't recommend that for hearing, but generally there's some backgrounds that have, like an office setup, something professional. Kurt's a big fan of using those backgrounds, I know. All right, next slide. All right, also the lighting. Kurt touched on this a little bit earlier. Generally, you want to use a front lighting because it will illuminate you more than your surroundings. Lighting from above can cast shadows, from the sides the same thing, and it can just be a little distracting. You really want to avoid backlighting because light from the back causes your camera to have to adjust, and so it'll tone down the iris on the camera to make sure it doesn't absorb too much light, and that results in you being closer to the camera. You will not be able to be seen by anybody. So really avoid that backlighting. Make sure there's no windows behind you that are open, and use that front lighting. And another thing to consider is when you are using front lighting, if you wear glasses, make sure there's no big glare. That could be a distraction as well. Now, as I said before, this is all, testifying is all, it's a presentation, and we want you to present a confident demeanor. Posture comes into that. So you want to be sitting upright, but you also want to appear relaxed. You want to appear that you know what you're talking about and you're not worrying too much. So sit straight up. You might even lean a little straight, or a little towards the computer. Try not to slouch, sit too far away from the camera, and keep your hands resting either on your lap or on your desk, unless you're using them to sort through documents, or some people talk with their hands, and that's fine too. And just like in the hearing room, every movement you make, every face you make, it's going to be emphasized. And on the camera, there's no hiding, right? So you're going to be up front and in the face of everybody that's watching this hearing. So just kind of think about, and it's hard during the testimony to do this, but be aware of what you're doing. Try not to touch your face too much. Make sure your facial expressions aren't putting out the wrong idea. Be aware of eye rolls, etc., and just continue to try to present that calm, confident demeanor. Now, I think we're going to finish up with a few just general guidelines. And ultimately, in a virtual hearing, you want to present your testimony the same way you would in the hearing room. So don't do anything you wouldn't do in the hearing room, like answering text messages, playing on your phone, or talking to other people in the room, as Kurt had mentioned. Now, of course, we all know these hearings sometimes can go on for a long time. Cross-examination can go on for a long time, and you may take breaks. And oftentimes during hearings, in between those breaks, you'll want to confer with your attorney or maybe talk to other staff. Please, in these virtual hearings, do not do that over the Q&A or chat functions on the virtual hearing software. This is because those conversations could be saved with any recording of the hearing, and we do not want other parties or the commission to see anything you could be asking or telling your attorney. You want to have those conversations in some other medium, either phone call, text message, or email, something like that. Now, I oftentimes ask witnesses to be aware of this just in any hearing prep, but it is always a good idea when you're asked a question in cross-examination, before you provide an answer, pause. Make sure you've heard the whole question and make sure you understand the question. In a virtual setting, this can be even more important because sometimes with bad connections, there can be a little lag. So you really want to make sure whoever's asking you the question is finished and you have the full question. The other part about this is that it provides your attorney the ability to object if necessary, and it allows the court reporter to better identify who's talking and record what's being said easier. Now, this is true, in my opinion, in in-person hearings, but it's even more so in virtual hearings. And the idea of less is more. Rambling answers can be hard to understand over the internet, so make sure, you know, or try your best to provide clear, concise, well-organized answers. Doing so will, one, your answer will most likely be shorter. The fact finder is more likely to actually hear and understand and pay attention to everything you say, and it's going to result in a cleaner record. Now, lastly, practice makes perfect. It's always a good idea to practice, to do hearing preparation prior to any of this. For a virtual hearing, part of that practice would be to do your practice using the platform that you'll be using at hearing. Make sure you understand all of the operations. Make sure you know how to turn on your camera, use the mute function, and make sure you're just comfortable. If you know how to use it correctly and you know what to expect during the hearing, you're ultimately going to provide better testimony and the hearing's going to go smoother. With that, I think that concludes all of our slides. If anybody has any questions, Kurt and I would be happy to try to answer them. I don't think I see any in the chat box, but if you've got a microphone, feel free to unmute and ask away.
Hey, this is Keith out of the Kansas City office. In general, is moving forward, is the commission in favor of having virtual hearings over in person? For just for rate case, for general rate case. Well, I guess for any other than public hearings, is that where generally the commission is moving?
Keith, I think that's a question that's a little above my pay grade, but
well, I asked that because quite honestly, I usually don't watch. I don't get the chance to watch Agenda and we're here, your guys are there. But that was, I guess you answered my question. So
I think a safe answer, Keith, is be ready to do virtual hearings. The state of the world, I think, is everything's in flux. So
has I guess have the utilities had a preference for in-person versus virtual?
I think what I've heard is, it might depend on the utility and it might depend on, whether it was one of our first virtual hearings that had a lot of hiccups or whether it was something more recent where we've been able to iron out some of the kinks. I know early on there was some frustration with the way hearings were going. I think we're getting better. I think that everybody involved has now had an opportunity to do some of this virtual hearing, either preparation or at the actual hearing itself. So I think it's getting better. My understanding is that if there is an opportunity for in person, I think that's probably better. But the virtual option, I think, has to be, it's still an option.
Right. Well, and we were talking amongst ourselves during your presentation. In my opinion, I thought the witnesses in the Spire hearing that were in Chicago or New York, that did work kind of well, because you don't have to fly them in. There's that travel and cost involved, and resources. So that really was a benefit, being the opportunity to do virtual hearings for those witnesses. We've done that. Oh no.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, as someone who schedules a lot of the hearings and requests the court reporter often, I think it's likely, if anything, that we'll see a lot more of the hybrid hearings like the Spire one, because I know that, at least for the court reporter, it is a huge benefit to have them in person, especially for a big hearing like that. For our smaller conferences and stuff, it's not as big of a deal if they're virtual, but I think that at the very least, we'll see hybrid hearings moving forward.
I will say, and this is going back to something that Mark said, the ability to see someone testify versus having someone over the phone really makes a difference. I think it was probably, I'm going to say, in the 12 rate case, we had a company witness who was over the phone, and that, just someone outside looking in, that really did not work well. Just having someone on a conference call and not being able to see them talk. So yeah, the visual really does make a difference, at least in my opinion.
Anybody else have any questions? I don't hear any, but I think going to Keith's point, appearing virtually from the staff side, I think you've got an equipment issue and you've got a broadband issue, and I think our equipment issue has now been resolved. I think we have the equipment. There still might be an issue. Not everybody has great broadband. And depending on where you live, you don't necessarily you can't control that, and so that's kind of out of our control. But for the pieces that are in our control, I think we've got the equipment piece nailed down. It's just
there is a question from Kathleen, I think.
And so far we've been using WebEx for hearings, and I think that's because the WebEx has a call-in number feature through our contract with them, and our Teams does not have the phone number feature under our current contract. So my guess is WebEx. For the foreseeable future, things could always change.
Does anybody have any other questions?
Well, if you think of any later, you guys know where we live, so feel free to shoot me an email or come by my office or give me a call.
Absolutely. And again, the recording of this training will be available on our intranet site along with the accompanying presentation materials. Also, we'll be sending out our handy dandy Survey Monkey. Please let Curtis and Mark know how well they did on today. And in addition to that, let us know about what any other trainings, technical, legal, or interpersonal, that you would like for us to host, facilitate, develop, etc. And we will be happy to try to get that to you. if anybody has anything else, please let us know. Otherwise, you guys are free to go unless Curtis and Mark has anything.
Nothing else from me.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Hey, Tony.
Yes.
Hi, this is Antonia in Kansas City
Hi.
office. I just
Yes.
wanted to let you know that we kind of had a full house here with me. I had Jeremy,
okay.
Keith, Karen, Jared, and myself. Matt and
Okay.
Carrie were not present.
Okay, perfect. And I think I have you guys on the sign up sheet. Would you send me an email with everybody that's in that room just so that I can cross reference that
Yep, I'll
information?
do so. Yes.
Perfect.
Mhm.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Have a good rest of the day, guys.
Great. You too.
You
Thanks.
too. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.